At a bustling train station, a 42-year-old Latino electrician is about to catch the most crucial train of his career. Everything is on track until he pauses to assist an older man struggling with his bags, causing him to miss the train. He loses his chance at a life-changing job interview, but feels no regrets. Unbeknownst to him, the man he helped is the president of a major railway company. And what follows is the reward for his selflessness. Before we dive into this story, do you recall your very first job? Share in the comments below and subscribe to our channel. A soft drizzle fell over the Chicago platform, turning the concrete into a shimmering patchwork of city glow and streetlights. Inside Union Station, Javier Morales adjusted the strap of his faded backpack as he navigated through Concourse C, his steel-toed boots clicking with every purposeful stride. Javier didn't put stock in fate anymore. He trusted in action, in progress, in making every moment count. Today, every second was critical. He glanced at the departure board. St. Louis, train 214, final boarding in 22 minutes. At 42, with a daughter, an aging father, and one shot at a job that could change everything, a senior technician role at Midwest Railworks. Not flashy, but secure. Not showy, but transformative. Paid leave, solid health benefits, and the chance to say yes to his daughter's soccer games instead of no to extra shifts. He turned toward the ticket gate, eyes fixed on the shorter line near the right wall, mentally mapping every advantage. That's when he noticed him, an older man, alone standing by the ticket barriers, surrounded by two heavy suitcases. His jacket was a faded green, once bold but now worn, with a frayed hem but spotless. His gray hair was neatly combed, slightly tousled by the breeze, and his hands shook faintly as he struggled to lift the largest bag onto the platform scale. Commuters rushed past without a second look. Business people glued to their earpieces, a couple wrangling a cranky toddler, a ticket agent shouting about IDs and boarding passes. No one paused. Javier slowed, his right hand tightening on his backpack strap, and he glanced at the clock. 20 minutes. He could still make it if he timed it perfectly, if no one ahead caused a delay, if he dashed to Platform 7 like his future depended on it. But something in the man's expression stopped him, not just the age or the struggle, but the quiet mix of determination and subtle embarrassment. The same look Javier had seen on his father's face when the hospital bills piled up, dignity fraying under pressure. "Sir," Javier said, stepping out of the flow of travelers, his voice steady but warm. "Need a hand with those bags?" The man looked up, startled, his hazel eyes sharp beneath a weathered forehead. There was a keenness in them, not cold, but perceptive, as if he was used to being overlooked. "Well," he said with a cautious smile, "I wouldn't turn down a bit of help. These bags have gotten heavier than I expected." Javier chuckled softly as he lifted the first suitcase with ease, noting its sturdy canvas and worn leather handles. "Heading somewhere special?" he asked, keeping the tone light as he placed it on the scale. "Just business," the man said vaguely, looking away briefly. "Though at my age it all blends together." He moved through the gate slowly, favoring his left leg slightly. Javier waited on the other side, collecting the bags, ignoring an impatient glance from a nearby agent. "I'm going to Platform 12B, the man said, squinting at a creased ticket. Javier's stomach sank. Platform 12B was at the opposite end of the station, past two escalators and a long corridor. He could still catch his train if he left now. He'd need to hustle, skip the water break, and definitely forgo the restroom. Or he could help this man reach his platform, ensure he boarded safely, and wave goodbye to his shot at Midwest Railworks. He looked at the man again, now fumbling to adjust his jacket, his breath slightly uneven, and heard his father's voice in his mind, recounting tales of his grandfather. "Miko, your abuelo never ignored someone in need. Not once, even when it cost him." Javier exhaled, shifted his backpack. "Platform 12B, huh?" he said. "That's a trek. I'll walk you there." "Oh, you don't have to," the man protested. "You didn't ask," Javier replied, grinning. "Besides, my papa raised me right." The man's face softened into a grateful smile, more powerful than words. "I'm Leonard," he said, offering a hand that felt frail but steady. "Javier," he replied, shaking it. "Let's get you to that platform." As they moved through the station, Leonard's steps were careful, and Javier matched his pace. Leonard apologized once for slowing him down, but Javier brushed it off. "It's not about speed," he said. "It's about getting there." Halfway along, Leonard admitted he felt dizzy. "Didn't eat breakfast," he murmured. "Silly of me." Without a second thought, Javier guided him to a nearby bench. "Rest here," he said, easing him down. "I'll be back." He returned shortly with a coffee, a protein bar, and a banana. "These looked good," Javier said with a shrug, handing them over. Leonard studied him as he sat beside him. "What brings you to the station today?" "Job interview," Javier said, keeping it casual. "Biggest one I've had in years." Leonard's eyes flicked to the departure board. "Final call, train 214 to St. Louis." "That's yours, isn't it?" he asked softly. Javier paused, then sighed. "Yeah, it was." Leonard looked pained. "You missed it because of me." Javier shook his head. "You needed help." "That was the right choice. Jobs come and go," he said, though the words felt heavy. "What we do, that's what lasts." Leonard didn't respond, but his gaze held Javier's for a long moment. Not judging, just observing. Javier stood, picked up the bags again. "Let's get you to 12B. Mr. Leonard, you've got a train to catch." As they continued, Javier felt an odd calm settle in, quiet and surprising. He'd missed his train, but something told him this wasn't the end. By the time they reached platform 12B, the overhead speaker announced boarding, and Javier could see the conductors in grey vests, checking tickets with practiced efficiency. Leonard's shoulders relaxed as he spotted the platform sign. Though his energy seemed low, Javier guided him to a bench near the tracks, where the morning light spilled across the concrete, and set his bags down carefully. "You're there," he said, offering a warm smile. Though his internal clock reminded him his train was long gone. Leonard adjusted his jacket, smoothing it absently, then looked at Javier with concern. "Will you be okay, Javier?" His voice was soft but firm, like someone used to asking hard questions. Javier nodded, though his posture sagged slightly as he glanced at the tracks, where a distant train pulled away. "I'll manage," he said, half to Leonard, half to himself. He didn't mention his phone was at 3%, or that he'd spent his last cash on the coffee and food, or that sleeping on a station bench was looking likely. Leonard didn't press. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small notebook with a leather cover, and tore out a page. He scribbled something, folded it, and pressed it into Javier's hand. "You'll need this," he said, his tone cryptic but kind. Javier glanced at the paper, then back at him. "What's this?" Thank you," Leonard said simply, "in case we don't cross paths again." Javier slipped it into his pocket without reading it, unsure how to respond. "Thank you for walking with me," Leonard added, his hazel eyes bright. "Most people just hurry by. It's rare to find someone who stops." Javier gave a small smile. "Stopping wasn't the plan today, but I guess meeting you wasn't either." Leonard chuckled, a warm, earthy sound that reminded Javier of his uncle's living room. The boarding call grew louder, and Leonard stood, steadying himself on the bench. Javier moved to help, but Leonard waved him off gently. "I've got it." He joined the line, his steps slower but deliberate. Javier watched as he handed his ticket to the conductor, who barely looked up from her scanner. Javier caught a glimpse of priority seating on the digital display, which surprised him. He hadn't pegged Leonard for a first-class traveler, not with his worn jacket and quiet demeanor. Still, he said nothing, just watched until Leonard vanished into the train car. With Leonard gone, the station's noise felt hollow. The rush from earlier had faded, leaving Javier with a sense of uncertainty. He checked his phone, 2% battery, no charger nearby. His backpack felt heavier, as if the missed interview and unspoken worries had settled inside. He wandered back through the station, passing newsstands, digital kiosks, and a kids' play area with faded stickers. He found an empty bench near the lost and found, set his bag down and sat, stretching his legs. For a while he just watched the crowd, reunions, drivers with name signs, luggage carts rattling by. Eventually he leaned back against the wall, closed his eyes, and told himself he'd rest for just a moment. Sleep came fast, deeper than he'd expected, and when he woke the station's lights had dimmed, the afternoon sun replaced by evening shadows. His phone was dead. His stomach rumbled, but his wallet was empty. He pulled out Leonard's note and unfolded it. In neat handwriting it read, "Wait here. I'll come back for you." No name, no details, just those 6 words. Javier frowned, puzzled, then tucked the note away. Maybe it was symbolic, a gesture to ease a tough moment. But something in Leonard's voice, his steady gaze, suggested more than polite words. An hour passed. Javier was eyeing a quiet corner near the ticket counter for the night when the station door slid open, bringing a rush of cool air and the hum of an engine outside. A polished silver SUV pulled up under the departure canopy. The driver, in a crisp navy suit, stepped out and opened the rear door with precision. Javier didn't notice at first, his eyes tracing patterns in the floor tiles. Then he heard the voice, clear, unmistakable. "Mr. Morales," the driver said, holding the door. "Mr. Grayson is waiting." Javier looked up, confused. "Sorry, what?" The driver nodded toward the SUV. "Mr. Leonard Grayson. He sent me to bring you." "Your bag, sir?" Javier blinked, scanning the sidewalk. Then he saw him, Leonard, stepping out of the SUV, no longer in the faded jacket, but now in a tailored suit. His hair neatly combed, his presence somehow commanding. The same Leonard, yet transformed. He smiled at Javier, his eyes warm under the station's lights. "I said I'd come back," he said. Javier stood, stunned. "I thought you were on that train to Cleveland." "I was," Leonard replied, "but I had a stop to make." He gestured to the SUV. "Come with me, Javier. You deserve a second chance." Javier hesitated. "Where to?" "St. Louis," Leonard said. "Tonight." "But how?" Javier asked. "My train," Leonard said, as if it were obvious. "Let's go. We have a lot to talk about." Still dazed, Javier grabbed his backpack and followed through the doors. The world shifting beneath him like a quiet earthquake. The SUV glided through a private station exit, avoiding the crowded platforms and slipping onto a service road lined with warehouses and dim streetlights. Javier sat in the back, his backpack beside him, hands resting uneasily on his thighs. The interior smelled of leather and faint citrus, and the silence between him and Leonard felt oddly comfortable. Leonard said little as they drove, just watched the road with a slight smile, as if he knew something Javier hadn't yet grasped. Javier shifted, still in the same shirt he'd pressed that morning, now creased and slightly damp. He felt out of place, like an electrician in a scene meant for someone else. "Mr. Grayson," he said carefully, "what's happening here?" Leonard turned to him, his hazel eyes sharp in the SUV's soft lighting. "You helped a man when no one else did," he said. "Now he's returning the favor." "That's it." "But why me?" Javier asked, genuinely puzzled. "You don't know me." Leonard gave a warm chuckle. "I know more than you think," he said. "I know you stayed when you could have left. I know you missed something big to help a stranger. I know you treated every moment with respect, even when you thought no one saw. And I saw, Javier. That's the point." The SUV approached a gated entrance, where a guard waved them through. Ahead, under soft platform lights, stood a sleek private train car, its silver exterior gleaming with a subtle emblem, a crescent moon over tracks, the logo of Horizon Railways. Javier's eyes widened. The car's door was open, its interior lights glowing, the kind of train he'd only seen in magazines. "Wait," he said. "This is your train?" Leonard nodded, stepping out as the driver held his door. "It is. And we're going to St. Louis tonight," Leonard added. "You have an interview tomorrow, don't you? I won't let you miss it again." As they approached the car, a steward in a sharp grey uniform greeted them. "Good evening, Mr. Grayson, Mr. Morales. Welcome aboard." Javier paused at the steps, looking at the polished train, then back at Leonard. "You sure about this?" "Absolutely," Leonard said with a grin. "Unless you'd rather sleep on that bench?" Javier laughed quietly, hefted his bag, and stepped aboard. The train car was unlike anything he'd imagined. Plush cream seats with silver trim, mahogany paneling, and soft lighting that felt more like a luxury lounge than a rail car. There were no crowded rows, just a spacious layout with a dining area, a small office nook, and a galley where the faint scent of roasted coffee lingered. Leonard settled into a wide chair and motioned for Javier to join him. Javier sat, still feeling like an intruder. The steward brought them drinks, water for Javier, tea for Leonard, and as the train began to move, Javier watched the platform lights blur into streaks. The ride was smooth, almost silent. In the gentle sway, Leonard turned to him. Know much about train mechanics? Javier shrugged. Some. Motors are motors, but trains are a different beast, Leonard nodded. True, but not so different. Circuits, hydraulics, diagnostics, they share a language. What matters is whether you can hear it. Javier tilted his head, curious. Horizon Railways started with 3 leased cars and a vision. Leonard continued. We're not just moving people, Javier. We're building opportunities. That takes people who understand systems and people. Javier leaned in. What are you getting at? Leonard studied him, then spoke. We're launching Horizon Tech Pathways. Training hubs in Kenya, Brazil, Thailand. Small to start, 40 trainees per site. Local talent built from the ground up. Javier felt his backpack on the floor, a reminder of the life he'd thought was fixed. You think I'm the guy for that? Leonard sipped his tea, then looked out the window. I think you have the skills, he said. You just need the right workshop. He pulled a folder from a briefcase and slid it across the table. Take a look. Inside was an offer, technical lead for Horizon Tech Pathways. Javier's pulse quickened. This says Kenya, he said. Leonard nodded. You'd be helping others begin and you wouldn't be alone. What about St. Louis? Javier asked. Go to the interview, Leonard said. Hear them out, then decide. But I think you already know what you're leaning toward. He handed Javier a pen, sleek and heavy. No need to sign now, but if you do, training starts next month. Javier stared at the folder, then out the window, where city lights flickered like possibilities. He wasn't sure what he'd choose, but for the first time in years, he felt the weight of having options. The next morning, Javier stood in the lobby of the Gateway Tower in St. Louis, a sleek glass building that felt more suited to a coastal city than the Midwest. His shirt, re-ironed with a hotel iron, was tucked into pants that still showed faint wear at the hems. His boots, polished with a hotel towel, clicked softly on the polished floor as he shifted, clutching a folder Leonard had given him, not the job offer, but a detailed plan for Horizon's training program, which he'd read twice since arriving. Today wasn't about Leonard, though. It was about the safer path. The receptionist, all sharp eyeliner and earpiece, gave him a curt nod and sent him to the 12th floor. Midwest Railworks, Suite 1203. Javier thanked her, stepping into a glass elevator, his reflection looking steadier than he felt. The ride was silent. At Suite 1203, a woman in a crisp blazer greeted him with a quick handshake, introducing herself as Karen Holt, head of operations. Javier, glad you made it. Your resume's impressive. Real-world experience is what we need. Javier nodded, wary of the word need. Thanks for having me, he said. The interview went smoothly. Holt asked about wiring diagnostics, system retrofits, and managing tight budgets. Javier answered easily, drawing on years spent in cramped utility rooms and dusty workshops. He mentioned mentoring new hires at his old job, building a makeshift circuit tester when funds were low, and teaching his daughter to spot faulty wiring by sound. Holt jotted notes, then said, You'd report to our lead engineer, Tom Reese. He's fresh from Purdue with a master's. You two should mesh well. Javier kept his face neutral, but the words hit hard. He'd be under someone with less hands-on time, but more credentials. Holt went on. Hours are 5:30 a.m. to 4:00 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Overtime's optional but expected. Starting pay is $60,000, with a review in 18 months. Benefits included. You'd start next week. Javier nodded. Can I have a day to think it over? Holt's eyes narrowed slightly. We've got another candidate with a pending offer. I can give you 24 hours. Javier thanked her and left, the St. Louis sky wide and gray above him. His phone buzzed as he hit the sidewalk. A text from Leonard. Dinner, 7 p.m., the Archview, top floor. That evening, Javier rode another elevator, this time to the top of a historic St. Louis hotel. The Archview was all polished oak and floor-to-ceiling windows, its rooftop restaurant commanding a view of the gateway, arch glowing against the night. Leonard stood by a window, holding a glass of water, dressed in a charcoal suit, his hair neatly combed. He turned as Javier approached, his smile calm and grounded. You made it, he said. You look like a man with choices to weigh. They sat at a table for two, linen napkins, no menus, everything prearranged. As servers moved quietly, Leonard clasped his hands and looked at Javier. What did they offer? Javier laid out the details plainly. When he finished, Leonard nodded. It's solid work. It'll pay the bills. Javier stared at his glass. 6 months ago, I'd have taken it without blinking. But now? Now what? Leonard asked. Javier paused. Now it feels like settling instead of starting. Leonard leaned forward. That's because it is. It's not a dead end, but it's a choice. I won't judge you either way. The question is, are you chasing security or purpose? He pulled out the folder from the train. We need someone in Nairobi. The hub's almost ready. The program's outlined. But it needs a leader, someone who knows systems and earns trust. The offer stands: better pay, housing, global benefits, and school support for your daughter. More than that, it's meaning, Javier. Javier swallowed. You don't know me that well. I know enough, Leonard said gently. I know you stopped when you could have kept going. I know you spent your last dollars feeding someone else. I know you cared more about a stranger's well-being than your own plans. That's character, and character builds everything else. The air grew still, the weight of opportunity settling between them. Javier looked out at the city, lights dancing below, lives moving in every direction. If I do this, he said slowly, I'm uprooting my life, taking my daughter to a country I've never seen, leaving everything I know. Leonard didn't push. And stepping into something remarkable, he said. Javier nodded, then picked up the pen beside the folder. It felt heavier than any wrench he'd held. He thought of the station bench, the man with shaking hands, the relief in his eyes when Javier offered help. He thought of his grandfather, who never got the chance Javier now held. Then he signed. 18 months later, the morning sun spilled across the tarmac outside Nairobi, Kenya, casting golden streaks over the freshly built Horizon Tech Pathways Center. Javier Morales stood on a balcony overlooking the compound, arms crossed over a crisp gray uniform with the Horizon emblem, a crescent moon over tracks stitched above his heart. From here he could see the workshops filled with diagnostic tools, the dorms housing 25 local trainees, and the 2 train cars parked for hands-on learning. Javier watched with quiet pride as 2 of his best students ran through a wiring checklist, their hands steady and sure. Then a black SUV pulled into the lot, its arrival subtle but unmistakable. Javier's chest tightened slightly. Leonard still had that effect. The door opened, and Leonard stepped out, in a light cotton suit, removing his sunglasses to survey the center. At 70, he moved more cautiously but with the same certainty. Mr. Grayson, Javier said, offering a hand with a grin. Welcome back. Leonard took it, holding it a moment longer. You look at home here, he said, studying Javier's face. Most days I am, Javier replied. They walked into the workshop, where trainees stepped aside respectfully, some nodding, others whispering. They know you, Javier said softly. To them, you're not just a name. You're why they're here. Leonard smiled. And you're the one who shows up every day, stays late, makes it work. You're why they're thriving. As the sun sank, casting long shadows across the lot, Leonard prepared to leave, his flight back to the U.S. waiting. Before entering the SUV, he turned to Javier. Santiago's next, he said casually. We start building in 6 months. It needs someone to lead. Javier raised an eyebrow. You're offering me another one? I'm offering you the choice, Leonard said. Javier didn't answer right away. He looked out at the center, where his team worked with purpose. Their hands confident, their futures bright. He thought of his daughter, now in a nearby international school, asking about circuits and train routes. He thought of his grandfather, whose photo hung in his office beside a framed copy of Leonard's note, "Wait here. I'll come back for you." "I'll consider it," Javier said, smiling. Leonard smirked. "You always do." As he got into the SUV, he lowered the window. "And Javier," he said, his voice warm, "thank you for carrying my bags that day." Then he was gone, the SUV fading down the road. Javier stood for a moment, letting the quiet settle, then turned back to the workshop. Behind him, the center's sign gleamed, Ahead, 25 futures held tools, eager to learn, ready to soar. Somewhere in a train station, maybe right now, someone else might face a choice, to rush by or to stop and help. And maybe, just maybe, they'd choose as he did. Because sometimes a missed train is just a different track. And what seems like an end is the start of something far greater. Join us to share inspiring stories by hitting like and subscribe. Don't forget to tap the notification bell to begin your day with deep lessons and heartfelt connection.